This film begins with a pregnant woman named Danette. At that time, she gets hit by lightning during a storm and is taken to the hospital. Sadly, Danette dies, but the doctors save her baby boy, who was born early. When Danette's husband, Greg, arrives, the doctor tells him what happened. The doctor also says that Greg's son has albinism, which means he has very white skin. Greg doesn't seem to want to accept his son because of this. 20 years later, Sheriff Doug Barnum and his team investigate the death of an old man in his house. They find out the man died from a heart attack. While searching the house, they find a basement with a teenage boy living there. Doug can't get the boy to come out, so he calls a psychologist named Jesse Caldwell for help. When Jesse gets to the basement, she finds the teenage boy hiding in a dark corner. She talks to him until he finally comes out. The boy's name is Jeremy Reed, and he has albinism. Because of his very white skin, people call him Powder, and he has never left the house. When Jesse asked why Jeremy didn't call the police when his grandfather died, Jeremy explained that his grandfather told him not to talk to anyone for his own safety. His grandfather even built a small library in the basement, so Jeremy could learn new things. Jeremy said he had memorized all the books in the library. Upon hearing that, Jesse decided to test him and was surprised to find out that Jeremy really did remember every paragraph in the book she chose. Jesse was impressed by Jeremy's abilities, so she took him to a boys' dormitory because he didn't have a guardian and was now under state care. At the dormitory, Jeremy caught the attention of many boys living there. Because he was different, a group of boys started bullying him during dinner. The leader of the group, John Box, asked Jeremy to balance a spoon on his nose. Soon after, Jeremy took the spoon and used his hidden power to pull another spoon toward him, surprising everyone in the cafeteria and making them think he was strange. Meanwhile, Doug went home after work and passed by his son, Stephen, without greeting him. Doug and Stephen didn't have a good relationship since Doug's wife, Emma, became seriously ill. Soon after, Doug went inside and checked on Emma, who was lying weak in bed due to cancer. He also asked the nurse about her health. A few days later, Jeremy started high school and joined a physics class. During the class, the teacher, Mr. Donald Ripley, was showing a device that makes electricity. When the device was turned on, Jeremy started to feel uneasy and began to shake. At that time, the device kept making strong electric currents, and suddenly the electricity went into Jeremy's body, making him float in the air. The students got scared and moved away. There, Mr. Ripley tried to turn off the device, but ended up smashing it with a chair to stop the electricity. Suddenly, Jeremy fell unconscious, and Mr. Ripley checked on him. When he touched Jeremy, Mr. Ripley felt something strange. Shortly after, Jeremy was taken to the hospital, and Mr. Ripley explained to the doctor what had happened. The doctor didn't believe him because such a strong electric shock should have killed Jeremy, or at least burned him. But there, Mr. Ripley tried to convince the doctor that Jeremy's body went through a special process, which is why he had no hair. While they were talking, a nurse came in to say that Jeremy had escaped by jumping out of a window. Afterward, Jeremy was walking home and met his classmate, Lindsey Kellaway. While they were talking, Lindsey's neighbor was secretly watching them, and Jeremy, who could read minds, told Lindsey what her neighbor was thinking. Hearing that, Lindsey didn't believe him and thought he was having hallucinations from the electric shock. A little later, Jeremy walked to his grandfather's house, but Doug and his coworker, Harley Duncan, stopped him and told him to go back to school. When they got to the school, Jeremy was taken to a room where the principal told him that Jeremy's IQ test showed he had an IQ over 300, making him very special. But Jeremy wasn't interested and asked to go back to his grandfather's house. And Jesse, who was also in the room, then told Jeremy that the bank had taken his grandfather's house, so he couldn't live there anymore. Another day, Doug and Harley took the students, including Jeremy, camping in the forest. That night, the students sat around a campfire, but Jeremy sat alone, so Doug went to talk to him. While they were talking, lightning flashed in the sky, and Jeremy said he could feel the rumbling inside him. He explained that his mom was struck by lightning while she was pregnant with him, which might be why he is special. The next morning, Jeremy was walking alone in the forest when John and his friend Mitch started bothering him again. Suddenly, John, holding a rifle, aimed it at Jeremy. Just before John pulled the trigger, a gunshot was heard from a distance, catching everyone's attention in the forest. They all ran towards the shooting and saw that Harley had shot a deer. When Jeremy saw the dying deer, he felt its pain and fear. Soon after, Jeremy grabbed the deer and then Harley's wrist, transferring the deer's pain to Harley. Harley started to feel the pain, and John aimed his gun at Jeremy, telling him to let go of Harley. But Jeremy didn't listen. Luckily, Mitch took John's gun, saving Jeremy's life. After this, Jeremy was taken to see Jessie. She asked him why he did that, but Jeremy didn't answer and just said he wanted to go home. There, Jessie tried to explain that he couldn't go home, which made Jeremy angry. Then, he used his power to break the glass and lights in the room. Ignoring Jessie's fear, Jeremy walked away and warned her not to stop him. Meanwhile, Doug was at home talking to the family doctor, who gave him bad news about his wife's condition. At that moment, he didn't understand why Emma was still holding on, but he felt she had something to say. Sadly, Doug couldn't communicate with Emma, who was lying weak in bed. The next day, Jeremy was sitting alone in the dining room when Donald came up to him. Donald told Jeremy that he could feel a different energy in Jeremy's body after the electric shock. Donald said that after touching Jeremy, he felt younger. Then, he advised Jeremy to use his powers for good and do amazing things. At that time, Donald wanted to help Jeremy use his powers properly and promised not to take advantage of him. Jeremy finally agreed to be friends with Donald after being convinced. Meanwhile, Doug visited Harley's house and was surprised to find out that Harley had thrown away all his guns, even though he loved hunting. Harley explained that after feeling the pain of the dying deer through Jeremy's power, he was traumatized and couldn't hold a gun anymore. Hearing this, Doug decided to ask Jeremy for help to communicate with his sick wife, Emma. Soon after, Doug took Jeremy to his house and introduced him to Emma, who was very sick. There, Jeremy gently touched Emma's forehead to enter her mind. Then, he found out that Emma didn't want to die without her wedding ring and hoped that Doug would make up with Steven. Doug remembered when Emma lost her ring in the snow while their family was playing together. Through Jeremy, Emma told Doug that Steven had found the ring and kept it in a silver box on her bedside table. Doug cried when he heard this and quickly put the ring on Emma's finger. There, he hugged Emma, who opened her eyes one last time to say goodbye to him. Shortly after, Steven came home and Doug hugged him, making peace after years of not getting along. A few days later, Jeremy went to a county fair and met Lindsey, the only person who didn't see him as different. While they were talking, he touched Lindsey's hand, letting her hear his thoughts about how his father had abandoned him because of his albinism. Lindsey tried to comfort Jeremy, telling him that he would be the most amazing person in the world. Soon after, they kissed, which drew attention from people around them. At that time, Lindsey's father saw this and got angry, almost scolding Jeremy for kissing his daughter. Luckily, Jessie arrived and helped Jeremy, apologizing to Lindsey's father before taking Jeremy away. When Jeremy got back to the dormitory, he packed his things, planning to return to his grandfather's house because he felt unwanted. As he was leaving, he saw some teenagers playing basketball and stopped to watch. It turned out to be John and his friends, who often teased Jeremy. There, John saw Jeremy leaving and blocked his way by taking his hat. Instead of fighting, Jeremy read John's mind and revealed that John had been mistreated by his stepfather. Hearing that, John became even more annoyed. When he saw it was going to rain, he dragged Jeremy into the yard, took off his clothes, and pushed him into the muddy water to embarrass him. At that moment, Jeremy couldn't take the humiliation, so he used his electromagnetic powers, making John and his friends get thrown back. A little later, Mitch and the others started waking up, except for John. Mitch checked John's heartbeat and realized it had stopped. In a panic, Jeremy used his electrical powers to save John. Grateful, Mitch decided to help Jeremy escape from the dormitory. There, Jeremy managed to secretly get on a vehicle leaving the dormitory and arrived at his grandfather's empty house. All the belongings had been taken by the bank. Soon after, Jessie found Jeremy and comforted him, saying he would find a better place where people would accept and understand him. Soon after, Donald joined them, and they were going to take Jeremy away. At the same time, Doug and Harley arrived and agreed to let Jeremy go, thanking him for helping Doug make peace with Steven. Suddenly, lightning started rumbling, and Jeremy ran into the field to be struck by lightning. At that time, Jessie, Harley, and Doug followed and tried to stop him. At the end of the film, Jeremy was struck by lightning and disappeared. On the other hand, Jessie, Donald, Doug, and Harley were also hit by the electrical shock from the lightning that made Jeremy vanish. The film ends. The moral lesson from this film is if life gives you lightning powers, Use them to shock bullies and impress your friends. But seriously, always keep your clothes on at county fairs.